Thanks very much. We're here in Cape Town, less than a couple of hours away from the budget speech to be delivered by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. We're discussing the budget speech and speculating ahead of it around many an issue. The one issue that we're now going to discuss is tax. You know, to what extent is the Finance Minister going to be able to tax South Africans? It seems as though there's not much of a likelihood, given the fact that we're all going through economic difficulties and money is a bit too tight to mention, both for households and businesses. Well, to discuss this further, I'm joined by Keith Engel. He's the CEO of the South African Institute of Taxation. All right, apologies for that. But anyway, let's get into it with Keith. Thank you so much, Keith, for talking to us. Your title there is a bit long-winded. But in terms of the expectations, speaking to tax analysts many a times before the budget, there's an expectation that, you know, personal income tax, corporate income tax, the usual suspects as well as VAT are unlikely to get lifted because, of course, everything's very tough. And how can you ask people to pay more money in tax when they're barely making it over the line?
Yeah, I think what people want this year is a boring budget when it comes to tax. Stay the course. And we're hoping that if you need extra revenue, that the commissioner is going to take care of the difference. That's really what they've been saying for several years, and that's what we want. I think the only thing that people would like on their side is there's been a lot of inflation through the system, and they're hoping the marginal rates get adjusted for inflation. Now, whether that's affordable is a problem, because oftentimes it's only partially affordable. And you've seen over the last 10 years, those rates effectively have been increasing because of the lack of adjustment for inflation. But overall, a boring budget is a good budget.
Boring budget indeed, but of course South Africans are keenly looking for incentives, not just around the solar roof tops that President Ramaphosa had referred to in the SONA address, but also on issues like diesel. People are spending a lot of money on diesel just to keep their businesses running, even within their own homes, and there's a hope that indeed there's going to be tax incentives around there. What sort of incentives do you anticipate the National Treasury giving us this year in order to help alleviate our current circumstances?
Yeah, I think the commissioner created a buzz around incentives. Look, I think generally the incentive space, we're not going to see much. They're just trying to hold on what they have. But when it comes to energy, I think there's now hope. When it comes to individuals, if you're going to have an incentive, I think people want something simple. So you don't want something that's going to adjust your personal income tax returns. I think what everybody would like to have is VAT relief, zero rate on the VAT, and then perhaps customs relief wherever the customs are applying. But I have a feeling Treasury doesn't believe in that. They believe that the VAT system comes first. So I'll be very surprised if they make that compromise. But that's on the individual side. On the corporate side, they probably will make adjustments with enhanced deductions in order to have people invest further in the solar in order to take power off the grid. I think that's probably more likely.
So we are aware, and we've been learning from economists as well as National Treasury, that there's an expectation that indeed the coffers are going to be fuller for this particular financial year, 2022 to 2023. But given that economic growth forecasts are expected to be revised downward, what's your expectation about the tax take going forward?
Yeah, well, I think this is the issue. We get lucky a lot. We've been somehow exceeding expectations generally, and I think right now we are on the commodity cycle. I think that's going to come to an end. Well, maybe we get lucky on something else. And then I think the difference is, will SARS keep improving? Because SARS has been expanding the tax base. Because that's what they're saying. They are trying to increase tax revenue, but not on the legal people, not on the compliant. We're going after the non-compliant, and they are getting better. SARS today, to be fair to it, is probably stronger than it's ever been, especially reliance on third-party data. So I think that's the way they're going to go, but we can't give anything away. That's the problem. So we can't say, well, we're going to have major reductions in tax because of this year. We don't have the money. And really the issue too is our expenditures have to be taken care of, like ESCOM and so forth. We don't have enough money to fund it. So even though the tax take may have increased, the demand seems to be increasing a lot more.
Where do you think National Treasury can try to be more inventive when it comes to tax take? Because clearly they do need to push up their tax revenue, but they can't necessarily do that against a population that's already under financial stress. And when it comes to the issue of carbon tax, we know that South Africa's talking the talk internationally about bringing down its carbon footprint. What's the story there?
Well, carbon tax is a whole unique story in and of itself. Look, we're trying to do things better on the carbon tax. The problem is tax isn't where the problem is. The problem is what we're relying on. We remain relying on ESCOM, which is dirty coal. Now, they can beat us up for it, but you can see the Europeans, now that they're getting in trouble, are saying, well, maybe we should go back to coal. So it's not a tax problem. It's really a problem elsewhere on regulation and productivity on that side. The carbon tax, in theory, can be supported, but there's an argument it's too soon because we have to get off of coal. That is an economic problem for ESCOM. If you can do that, then the carbon tax is more justifiable. That's the general rule on the carbon tax side. In terms of what Treasury can do, I think Treasury has taken the position, and I agree with that, is that they shouldn't tinker too much. Stability is the best thing they can do. If there's an avoidance that they find and needs to be legislatively fixed, they will crack down. Right now, the Europeans are going after the famous Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 for all the international avoidance. They'll probably follow sway there. They'll pick up the loopholes that SARS finds. But if they need additional revenue, really it's coming down to enforcement, because people will accept if a guy is not paying his fair share under law, they need to pay. And what you can't do to people now is raise their rates while the other people are out in the field.
Keith, thank you very much for your contributions there. Keith Engel, the CEO of the South African Institute of Taxation, speaking to us there, not expecting a massive hike at all in basic taxes like your personal income tax, corporate tax, as well as VAT. However, analysts do expect, of course, the usual suspects like your sin taxes to get a raise, because we're not supposed to be drinking, we're not supposed to be smoking, and so therefore the finance minister will take his chances and raise those particular taxes. He may well give us some incentives on things like diesel, especially for SMEs that are now consuming so much diesel just to keep the lights on. With that, it's back to studio.